Sunday night talking about Spiritism. And today, this is May 2nd, 2021, we are going to cover chapter 12 in the book Evolution in Two Worlds by Chico, Xavier and Waldo Veira. So this is chapter 12, The Soul and Discarnation. Now we've been going through this book 11 weeks beforehand. I think there's quite a few more chapters left. It gets down really into the nitty-gritty of how the spirit has evolved, how that has affected our physical evolution to create these cocoons, these physical representations that we inhabit temporarily on Earth. Why are we on Earth? The main reason is for us to improve our character and our personality. That is what we're here for. Spiritism tells us, as it was codified by Allan Kardec. Let me bring this up here so I can introduce you. That I would like to talk about Allan Kardec first, because he's just a marvelous person. Brought to us in the 1850s, codified what I said, but he took part in mediums meetings. It became very interesting to him. At first he was very, like, I'm not sure about this. And then he wrote a series of 1,019 questions so he could get an organized answer of what was behind all that. And he didn't just ask one spirit. He went through different mediums and different geographical locations in Europe and didn't write down, didn't codify the answer unless they're similar or same. And of course, this he found out later, this was all part of what Jesus promised us. I will send you a consoler, the Spirit of Truth. So all this was organized with the Spirit of Truth, different spirits like St. Augustine and others, St. Louis, help and brought forth information to us. So now, and this is the third revelation. The first was Moses. The second was Jesus coming. The third is the Spirit's book, codified by Allan Kardec. He had other books. You can find all of his books on PDF. But what's great about this is they said, look, we're going to keep giving you more information as time goes on. And there's been books by Leon Denis. And of course, all these were Spiritist mediums, psychographing messages. So Leon Denis, G. Val Owen, Chico Xavier, Divaldo Franco, Yvonne Pereira, just a multitude of resources that people can read. And there's a lot more actually in Portuguese than there is in English. So I recommend everybody pick up the Spirit's book. You can go to my site, nwspiritism.com, click on the picture of Allan Kardec. It'll take you to the FEB bookstore where you can order a lot of these books by Allan Kardec and Chico Xavier. So let's get right into it. Chapter 12, The Soul and Discarnation. Metamorphosis and Discarnation is the title of this section. In discussing the phases of discarnation, it is useful to once again refer to the world of insects, to remember that while there are those that undergo complete metamorphosis, there are others that undergo incomplete metamorphosis, where the larvae leave the egg and immediately become an individual without going through the pupal stage. Ergo, wingless insects, although they do have oral apparatus, displaying particular characteristics in their transfiguration during the metamorphosis that marks their existence. Each subdivisions of insects in some way expresses the scale of phenomena that applies to the discarnation of high-order beings. Now, what does it mean by that? Let's carry on a bit. When mammals that are linked to human beings via very close ties of kinship discarnate, they meet in places where their companions are developing, but as is the case with the lower animals on their way to many evolutionary levels, they do not possess continuous thought in order to obtain the means for maintaining a new form. Thus, they do not experience spiritual heterogeneous because they're incapable of a broader equilibrium that would ensure the ascent of to a new plane of conscience. Consequently, with a histolus of cellular tissues completed in the process of physical death, their period of latent life is prolonged in the spirit realm. There, except for a very few species, they linger for a short time, incapable of handling the organs of their characteristic psychosomatic apparatus due to the lack of conscious mental substance. If they are not utilized for service in the spirit world for a certain amount of time after death of the physical body, they nearly always immediately fall into a profound lethargic state similar to hibernation. and are automatically attracted to the genetic field of their family groups, retaking the organism with which they'll undergo a new stage of experience, with the elements of automatism and instinct have already been fixated within their being, thus naturally undergoing the process of evolution. So let's carry on what he says, make it simpler. These low order spirits who control insects, amoebas, worms, maybe something like rats or whatever. When they die, they have a spirit, which means that there is a logical person, there is a logical construct in the spirit world that controls their body. As tiny as it may be, there is something in the spirit world that controls their body. Now, when they leave that task that they've been assigned to, let's say, control an ant. When they leave that, they're kind of in this almost hibernation state. And with the law of affinity, like with like, they kind of gather together all these ants and the spirits. They're just kind of waiting in a queue to be re-put into the physical world, the simulation of our physical world where we are now. And if they wait for a certain amount of periods, what he's saying, they just kind of rest. They are in hibernation or they're asleep, just like you would close your laptop and your laptop would it'd still have the power on, and when you open the lid, it would spring back up. The same thing with them, right? So that's what's happening, and then they will undergo what they've done before because they have a whole history of inhabiting ants per se or some other similar primitive organism, and they will use their instinct to control them as they controlled before. And then eventually they'll be assigned controlling a little bit more sophisticated animal. That's the way we're all raised up to be a human free-willed spirit as we go through these steps, and it takes who knows how long. So let's go on. Beyond histogenesis, through the incessant activity of universal paleogenesis on the physical and extra-physical planes, the intelligent principle, aided by the guidance influence of higher intelligence, incorporates the experience it needs on its laborious ascent to loftier acquisitions, meaning they will absorb more and more, and they'll be sent to higher and higher physical organisms. A little above the same basis, infra-primitive human beings, in the rusticity of their caves, are astounded by the glory of life after they die, like infants that are dazzled by the sight of a marvelous landscape, whose grandeur they cannot begin to comprehend in the least. At this point, continuous thought has given them the stability needed for a complete metamorphosis. So, very interesting what's happening is finally when they graduate, let's say from a dog, a dolphin, or an elephant, then they're given a little bit of more free will, I should say, not a little bit, because they have a little bit of free will as they're kind of these gray area animals that have some free will, but it's mostly it's mostly instinct. But now, when a primitive human goes to heaven, and if they go to heaven, it's what is this marvelous landscape? This is great. And in fact, there was talking about in the book No Solar is a spirit city above Rio de Janeiro, and before the Portuguese settled Rio de Janeiro, there was a small colony above Rio de Janeiro. No Solar wasn't created then; it was created by these colonists. But it was the same type of huts, and they're just the natives. Just when they died, they went to the place kind of like where they were from, and they just they didn't really improve too much. But then they went back and they were reincarnated back into their tribe. But then when the colonists got there, then they started creating this advanced city. So what he's saying, so these primitive human beings are then just kind of like kids in nursery school or kindergarten, right? You only go to nursery school a couple hours a day, kindergarten 3 or 4 hours a day, and you're just kind of introduced to this. And this is how the spirit world works. When people pass over and they go to heaven per se, it's not like this complete, world that's different, and you don't know up and down and sideways. It's very comfortable. It's like you know that, and then they educate you little by little. So let me continue on. At this point, continuous thought has given them this ability needed for complete metamorphosis. Through the persistence and constancy of thought, they've acquired the ability to mentally integrate themselves into their spiritual body and go beyond histogenesis using the lever of their own free will, enriched by inquiry and labor to a new individual state. Soothed by the edifying influence of the divine supervisors that watch over their progress, human beings sleep the sleep of death, mummified in cavernization like a pupa. So it sounds like some of these primitive humans, they introduce them a bit, they talk to them, and they say, okay, just wait till we can incarnate you again. So they'll sleep in heaven, or if they're in the lower zones or wherever they are, they'll have to probably pay and be with people like them. Won't be as nice. So they're just kind of coming out of this primitive existence, and they're just slowly letting them exercise their thought processes. So they don't probably understand yet is that in the spirit world, thought is action, whereas they came from the physical world, where they were assigned that physical world simulation, where things look real, and the physical world is an objective state, right? The wall is a wall, your head is hard, etc. Whereas in the spirit world, you can change your environment around you by your thoughts. Now, of course, you're influenced by all the thoughts around you, and you've got divine supervisors, as he calls it, people who have a greater force of will, and you're inspired and influenced by that. So let me carry on. Secreting mental substance based on renewing impulses, much like certain pupae that secrete a special liquid that facilitates their exit from the cocoon, the discarnating soul at the end of its process of the cells that make up its biological vehicle, and with its mental field fortified with new aspirations and dispositions, manages to mechanically disengage from the now worthless physical organs and uses advanced automatism to accomplish the histogenic endeavor through which it disconnects the subtle cells of its spiritual vehicle from the cellular remnants of its decaying physical vehicle, acting now with the efficiency and confidence that long and reiterated recapitulations have conferred on it. Meaning they've gone through this process. Okay, I'm used to this. I'm in the spirit world. I've been put into a physical body. I understand now that my physical body is at an end. It's kind of a little bit of an instinct working now, but working and to help them do this, it's just like training, right? It's like anyone training for a job, you do it over and over again, and when you do the job for real, it's second nature. Again, this is what happens. It's been reiterated recapitulations. You've lived, you've died in the physical world. You're used to disconnecting, and of course, the spirit world helps you disconnect. A lot of you will help you. Some people are alone, but those who deserve it will be helped and protected as they disconnect from their physical body. And of course, we've been told, especially by Leon Denis, says, look, dying is a much easier process than being born. Being born is pretty, rough on you, because it's a very strange thing. But when you die, you're going to this much nicer place, and you're going back to your home, the spirit world. Okay, now he talks about discarnate primitives. These primitive humans, however, who see themselves as lords in the animal hierarchy, as ruthless inhabitants of the forest or jungle, who hone their intelligence through force and cunning in the enslavement of the lower beings that live around their caves, awaken outside their dense body like terrified children. So again, this is very powerful groups of sentences. So that's, when the primitive humans, you're used to killing what you want to kill. You attack other humans. You may enslave other tribes if you can, or be enslaved. And then all of a sudden you're outside of your body and like, what's going on? I'll carry on. The separation of soul and body makes them feel powerless in light of the unknown, and they timidly remain close to the loved ones in whose company they start to live in other vibrational conditions, in multifarious processes of symbiosis, eager to once again re-enter the physical life which in their way of thinking is the only one available to them. Now, this is not just happens to primitive humans, but also a lot of people who are very materialistic, don't believe in the spirit world. And I've been in mediums meetings where they're not sure they're dead. They don't understand. They don't understand why people are not talking to them, and they kind of find out they're on this different dimension. But they're here. They're with their people. They try to interact, and they're all around them, but no one notices them. And of course, that's all they know. They don't even think about something higher, and it happens now too. I'll carry on. In this phase, they do not have the spiritual tools that can help them think in terms other than those of the tribal life they have always known. The spectacle of cosmic vastness is troubling to their eyes, and visits from extraterrestrial beings, even benevolent and wise ones, fill them with terror because they believe they are in the presence of good or evil gods, whose nature they concoct in the narrowness of their own concepts. Cornered in their hut, where death has robbed them of their physical body, they live in the tepid atmosphere in which their blood hairs breed, and they abandon their dwelling only when their incarnate family leaves due to the harshness necessities of subsistence and shelter. Longing for the devotion of their parents, and especially for their mother's care, discarnate primitives expelled from the physiological vessel have no other thought than to return once more to revitalizing cohabitation with those who speak their language and share their interest. Now, this is very logical. You lived within this tribe. That's all you know. You don't know of anything. Remember back in the old days, if you went more than like 5 or 10 miles from your tribe, that was big traveling. And all these stories of demons and evil gods, anything could happen to you, right? And of course, you only live to like 25 or 30. So now you stayed where you thought you were safe because life is tough, was tough. And then you kind of move as they went from place to place. And they were just waiting probably for the next birth so they could rejoin in the flesh for their tribe. Okay, the next section is Monotheism and Reincarnation. To be reborn in the flesh into their former tribe, whose exhalations magnetize their soul, is the unceasing aspiration of discarnate primitives. Monotheism overcomes them, causing all other desires to fade. Through the occlusion of other stimuli, the organs of the spiritual body withdraw or atrophy due to the lack of use, and they instinctively turn toward the seat of mental control, where they dwell, hidden and withered in a closed circuit within the center of thought, like potential implements of a living embryo within the walls of the egg. Under such circumstances, monotheism is reversible only through reincarnation. Thus, if we look at it from the proper perspective, discarnate human beings remind us of the bacteria that transform themselves into spores when environmental conditions are unsuitable, becoming immobile and remarkably enduring heat and cold for years, only to return to their cycle of evolution when they find themselves back in a suitable environment. So what is he saying? And this is talked about in some of the other books by spiritist mediums, is they'll go through and they'll see these spirits who, now if we're in the spirit body with our perispirit, we'll look like a regular person. Well, you maybe even think we're a regular person, but they will, in their mind, they'll go over and over again, and they'll start losing their perispirit, and they'll be this ovid, right? They're ovoid. And they'll be this like a watermelon shape, and they'll try and connect themselves to a human and try and live off of that sometimes, or other ones they'll just be in this feedback loop. And it's happened to people that's lived very criminal lives sometimes, or are as fixated by something they did wrong, or something for revenge, and they'll just play over and over again. And the only thing that can really fix that and get rid of that endless loop is to get them out of that and then put them into a body. Let me carry on. Feeling that they are in a climate adverse to their way of being, discarnate primitive humans refuse to live in the extra-physical sphere, and they are slowly immersed into the atrophy of their spiritual body cells through auto-hypnotizing monotheism caused by fixed depressive thought, which expresses their desire to return to the physical body. So they're being obsessed by a thought of returning. During this period, we usually say that such discarnates have lost their spiritual body, which have been transubstantiated into an ovoid body, something that also occurs to countless other discarnates in situations of disequilibrium. Again, that's what I said. If this happens even now to more advanced spirits, because they just have this infinite thought process, and that's why I think sometimes people will see ghosts or something, and they'll see the spirit do the same thing all the time, and somehow that person has the ability to see that, but that's because they're in this state where they're completely into this memory loop. We must note that this form, according to our current manner of perception, is an expression of the individuality's mental body, which, according to the principles of divine creation, contains all the vital organs of the soul's exteriorization in earthly and spiritual circles. Just like the seemingly simple egg contains the powerful bird of tomorrow, or like the tiny seed that contains in its embryonic tissues the stately tree that it will become in the future. So even a primitive spirit has within it all a kind of an outline, a copy of the physical body, and they'll have all that. So then through their many reincarnations, they will learn to attach their physical body, their perispirit, their spiritual body, the perispirit, into each of the important parts of their physical body. So within all their organs in the spiritual body, those organs will then attach to the other organs in their physical body, and they'll learn to control them. And this happens, right? So if you look at us right now, we as a physical body, we believe we're all controlled by our brain, but there's actually this perispirit that is this master controller, keeps ourselves in harmony. And that's why a lot of people can positively think, that people can cure themselves by positive thinking, and because their perispirit is controlling their body. And a lot of it just goes according to plan, and people don't have that ability, for the vast majority of us, including me. Otherwise, I would have had to have surgery like I've had. But some people can, and they can do things because their spirit body really controls their physical body through their mind. Most of them were put on this earth. We have this pipeline that doesn't let too much through, right? When we dream at night, we dream when we go to the spirit world, but we come back, we wake up, it's all confused because we're only allowed the concepts that will pass through the concepts that our brain can handle. Now, eventually our brain, which has a lot of spare brain cells and areas to think, is going to be much more advanced, and that will open up, and we'll be able to communicate with spirits. We'll be able to kind of float through the air, all sorts of things that we'll be able to do when we become less dense in a higher level planet. But right now, we are on this planet of atonement, coming into a planet of regeneration, and we're just trying to get out of the stage where we pay for our past wrongs and improve our personality and our character. So be patient. A much better life is coming, and you can help other people achieve it and yourself to achieve it. Okay, let me carry on. Physical form. However, just as the embryo developing in the egg needs either the warmth of the mother bird or the appropriate thermal environment of the incubator, and just as a seed needs the tepid cradle of the soil in order to release the germinative principles of the gigantic plant it will become, discarnate spirits that are eager to be reintegrated into the physical world need a reproductive vessel of the woman attuned to them by affinity and consequently by inheritance. They mechanically adhere to this vessel, where, according to the laws of reincarnation, it takes them just a few days to pass through all the phases of their evolution in the lower kingdoms of nature, meaning that, the fertilized egg splits and it starts becoming, more and more complex. Assimilating organic resources with the aid of the mother's cell that has been fertilized and fundamentally marked by the father's genes, the mind by itself develops a new physio-psychosomatic vehicle attaching to its invisible mode physical cells that multiply by mitosis in conformance with the guidance imposed on them. In other words, they reflect the conditions found in the discarnate mind. Thus, along with a new physical form, the mind shapes a new vehicle, woven of cells, which will also evolve after birth and persist after death. So what we've been told in other books is that when we are first into our mother's womb, genetics play a part. And they don't say this exactly in this paragraph, but to expand upon it is that spirit's mind can, to a certain level, within the limits of the DNA, the genetics that are within the mother and father, can make some changes at how they want to look and how they want to behave, and the special maybe attributes they have, only within the parameters that are given to them by the mother and father. Now, for people who are on Earth for special missions or who have done really well in other lives, and they are being given help more than other people, spirit helpers can come, and while that embryo is being formed, they can make small changes to the DNA. As an example, given one of Andre Luis's book, if someone is going to be a pretty well-known surgeon, right, he will be given ability to be more calm, better eyesight, excellent eye-hand coordination, all that. Even if the mother and father are clumsy brutes, right, they will tweak the DNA for that. Now, this is something you can look at. So you can look at it, and how this book is, they kind of show it to you in this physical form, and they're giving you examples of the physical form versus the spirit form, but they're kind of giving you this physical vision to look at. And this is very good. But then I also like to give people another way of looking at it, because everyone learns different ways. Another way of looking at it, and I really talk about this a lot in my book, The Spirit Universe, Spiritism has revealed the true existence of the reality of our existence, is you can look at it as one giant information set with applications roaming through that, and then seeing, because of the applications, we see the data into a natural area where we look at other people and they look like people, not like just pieces of information. And then when we switch our state and we go into the physical world, then a lot of our ability to sense is even put down even smaller, because in the physical world, we are really here to have stimuli hit us for us to change our character and our personality. So you can look at it different ways, however you think is best. But the bottom line is we all are wonderful spirits who are unique and really have our own personality. And yet, as they're saying in this book, we start pretty primitive, and therefore we've been successful being primitive. We've taken what we wanted, we've survived. And so we've had to, we had to fight or flight and be mean to other people. That's just part of it's part of that. And even when you're less than a primitive human being, when you're an animal, you ate what you ate. But as we become a free-willed spirit, we need to get rid of those primitive emotions. And that's why we go through a lot of hassle. Okay, natural discarnation is the next heading. Over consecutive millennia, human beings experience a natural discarnation, slowly progressing in degrees of conscience after the decomposition of the somatic body. Calling out our earlier comparisons with the insect realm, the uterine matrix offers humans a new form, and just as the larva nurses itself, thereby ensuring metamorphosis, the soul grows in experience while in the corporal body, acquiring merits or demerits according to its own conduct. So now we're getting to be a little more sophisticated, and they're saying, okay, when you did bad, when you were primitive humans and you killed other primitive humans, you maybe not have been really punished for that, because that was just par for the course. The spirit world doesn't doesn't hurt you for being completely ignorant when you do something. They try and teach you as you go. It's like you don't punish, babies for grabbing something. You just kind of try to show them, no, that's not a good idea. You try to educate them, which is the spirit world is always doing with us. I'll carry on. Then in the physical phenomena of death, of the envelope of physical matter, it hands itself over to a necessary pause in its activities. A hiatus of recovery, which may be long or short, to resurface afterwards through spiritual histogenesis, gaining new organs and tools necessary for its new field of action, where it remains in accordance with the knowledge it has acquired on the human journey. So this is another important. You remember what you've been through. You are who you are when you pass over. You don't turn into this wonderful angel. You don't lose yourself into this mass of spirituality. You are who you are. You are still unique. You still have your personality. You still have your sense of humor. You still have your faults too, unfortunately. But you'll look better because you'll start looking how you want to look because your mind controls everything. And you won't get sick. You won't get hungry. A lot of good things. I'll carry on. Thus, the nascent human conscience practices the lessons of life on the spirit plane through the discarnation or liberation of the soul, just as it practiced these same lessons on the physical plane through rebirth or immersion of the spiritual element in dense matter, evolving step by step from the rudimentary excitability of the bacteria to the full automatism of the higher animals upon which the realm of intelligence is based. So we just restated the fact that we've come up through all this. We're getting more complicated. We handle more complex organisms. And then we're even given the gift of free will. So eventually we can become a pure spirit, roam the universe, guide whole races, create planets, work for Jesus directly, right? Be part of spirit teams that come in and help other people. All these things are waiting for us. But first we have to learn how to control our primitive emotions. Okay, next section, review of experiences. From liberation to liberation by means of the death event, individuals begin to familiarize themselves with the extra-physical sphere. Just as in the early days of intrauterine existence in the reincarnation process, the consciousness recapitulates all the phases of its physiogenic evolution. It uses the wonders of memory to examine all the events of its life in a matter of a few minutes or several hours, sometimes referred to by discarnates when they describe to incarnates remarkable passages to the grave as it integrates into the subtle body by spiritual histogenesis during coma or categorization of the physical body. It just so happens that the mind, on the threshold of recomposition of its own vehicle, whether by means of biological rebirth or discarnation, automatically and quickly reviews all the experiences it lived, magnetically imprinting the cells that will develop into physical and psychosomatic units in the physical or spiritual body with the guidelines to which they will be subject during their new cycle of evolution. So, when you're first born and you're in the womb, you review all your past lives. And hopefully that says, okay, I've reviewed my past lives. I got to do better this time, right? And this is my blueprint. This is my plan. And I'm going to be successful. And then you go through life. And then when you sleep, you go back to spirit world. You talk to people. You try and get yourself till you can follow your plan and come out better and improved on the other side. And then when you die, you go through the review. I talked to by people with NDEs, near-death experiences, prophets, everyone, right? There's a spiritual review. And it's kind of the theme you read from NDEs for people who have lived a good, decent life. Not have to be perfect by any stretch of imagination. But the review is like, it doesn't like make you like, oh my God, you were stupid. Why did you do that? No, it was, oh, this is something you did right. This is something could be a little bit of improvement on. And what I've read over and over again is the person who is the harshest judge of your actions in these reviews is yourself. And in fact, most of those spirits are around you and helping you to say, no, 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 it's not that important. You know, we've all done that, right? It's because they all know that, you know, you're not going to be born on this earth if you've had kind of a normal life, and you're normal being that you've done bad things and you've done good things. You're not going to, next life, you're going to just be this perfect saint. That's not going to happen. It could, I don't know, but certainly it hasn't happened with me. So, but this is the review, and this is what I'll always let you go. Now, you're thinking, well, what about these people who are just criminals? They murdered people and all this. Well, they will have reviews, and they will think of these things, and they will feel bad, but they'll try and sublimate it, and they'll go to the lower zones, or they'll go to the dark abyss, and they won't think about it too much because they'll have the stimuli, people treating them as they treated others, right? The law of affinity. But it will come out, and they'll start thinking about these things they've done wrong. And eventually, and this is what purgatory, which is, there's no such thing as hell, which is, being damned forever. You're in this environment where there are spirits like you who haven't lived a good life, and they're treating you as you've treated others. And eventually you're going to decide, oh, I haven't done very well in my past life. Why am I with all these people? Then you'll want to rise. And what is said is that as you start rising out of the lower zone or the dark abyss, it is extremely painful, because as you go up one level to the next level, that your past deeds, your past bad deeds come at you, and you just feel horrible, and it's like torture. And they say it's almost, you have to burn off all that as an expression. I've read this in many different places, but they say it's all worth it. You've got to strive to go up from one level to the next. And there's little outposts that will help people rest at one level. They'll be given talk to by spirits, or spirits have been just a little bit higher level than they are. So they will be helped. But it's a hard trek up. And I don't think anybody should think like, oh, I've never been there. I've been pretty decent, in this life, I'm pretty okay. Well, yeah, you probably haven't been there for quite a few lives. But if you go back, 1,000 years or so, I'm sure you've been there. So we've all had to do that. And that's why these spirit reviews, right? These life reviews, I should say, are like, don't be too hard on yourself, because we've all been these rotten people, but we're all getting better. And that's where we need to think, right? We just improve ourselves a little. Now, when I say improve ourselves, what do I mean? I really mean is you got to rewire your brain, not just keep your mouth shut. You got to rewire your brain. When you see something you don't like, it's like, oh, I don't like that person. No, just say, oh, okay, the person is different. Don't gossip. Don't say, oh, so-and-so doesn't know what he or she's doing. They should be fired. Or no, if so-and-so doesn't know what they're doing, you try and help them learn what to do. And if there's gossip going around, you try to think something positive. Sometimes you have to fire people, right? Because they're just, they need that to know that they're not doing it really well. So I'm not saying to be Pollyannish about everything, but try to be as positive as you can. And if there's, you go to some coffee place and you hate the tattoos or whatever, the way that someone's dresses or their hair's done, just say, oh, that's how they want it to be. That's fine. Don't think negatively. It's like I talk about when I used to go to work, and I walked along to get to my building, and there was poor drug addicts, laying on alcoholics. And I at first, before I became a spiritist, I go, oh, they should just get these people out of here, dump those guys out, right? And then I go through them, or I used to, and I think, oh, that poor guy's not had a good life experience. That's a hard failure. It's going to be, I hope the next life's going to be better. I hope they get out of this, right? Because we've probably all been in some sort of drug-induced or psychological disability at one point or the other. So I try to think positive for them. knowing that they've got some work to do. God bless them. Okay, let me carry on. It just so happens that the mind, on the threshold of recomposition of its own vehicle, whether by means of biological rebirth or discarnation, automatically and quickly reviews all the experiences it lived, magnetically imprinting the cells that would develop into the physical and psychosomatic units in the physical or spiritual body, with the guidelines to which they will be subject during their new cycle of evolution. To confirm our assertions, we'd like to add that, on occasions, incarnates that have escaped great danger, such as accidents and attempted suicides, unharmed, tell of a similar phenomenon in review of their lives, also called panoramic vision and mental synthesis. And of course, a lot of NDEs have said the same thing. This next is called the law of cause and effect. Therefore, beginning their initiation on the spirit plane with an awakened and responsible conscience, human beings begin to grasp the essence of the law of cause and effect, finding with themselves ennobling or detrimental results of their acts. They understand karma is real. All actions have reactions. When torn and unhappy, they cry out in their affliction throughout the great lands of cosmic space, joining other guilty spirits of the same sort, with whom they share the troubling state of the raving imagination. They use the subtle plasma of their continuous and tormented thoughts to weave infernal webs. Now, when he's saying through the great lands of cosmic space, they're not resident in cosmic space. They're residents on the lower zone or the dark abyss. The lower zone starts at the crust of the earth up to the lower level of heaven. And the dark abyss, which is a type of purgatory, is below the crust. So, but their thoughts go out still. All of our thoughts go out everywhere. And which consequences of the wrongs develop by means of the profound and strange fecundizations of insanity and suffering that precede repertory reincarnations. However, this is also where, hovering over the hell and purgatory of remorse and cruelty, rebelliousness and wrongdoings, the sublime apostolate of beings that harmonize themselves with the divine laws begin. That's what I said before. They're in their mental hell and purgatory, and they're starting to think, I'm not sure this is what I really wanted it to be when my physical work. Maybe I should improve. I'll carry on. Touched with compassion for the ties they left behind in the physical world, these noble and heroic souls, under the inspiration of angelic powers, start the work of selflessness and renunciation. Now, when they say the love of soul, no matter how evil anybody is, there's always somebody they love. Their mother loved them, or they love their brothers or their sisters. There's always someone, and the angel's trying to think of this person. Why, think of how loved. Wouldn't you want to be with them in heaven, or wouldn't you want to help them on the earth if they're still alive? So they try to give them inspiration, and sometimes they do it on themselves, of where they want to be. I'll carry on. With which the glory and divinity of love construct the realm of the highest good, also called heaven, from where they shed a brighter light over the night of human beings. Now, that was chapter 12. And next week is the soul and the fluids. So I hope this helped explain more about your physical being and your being in the physical form, in the spirit form. So let me, on my site, nwspiritism.com, I have in PDF form. It's also, of course, in Kindle, Audible, and paperback. But I have Spiritism 101, the Third Revelation. So that is available free on PDF. And you can download it on PDF. You can also download what I showed before, the Spirits book. I have that on my YouTube channel. I have all the chapters in Audible form. I also have that on my site, NW Spiritism, in MP3 format. And I think it's MP4 or M4 something, where it's just like an Audible book where you can go from chapter to chapter. You can download it. It's 2 files. It's so big. It's too big for the site I have to put it in 1 file, but you can download 2 files and listen to it on your iPhone or your whatever your Apple product or whatever you have to listen to Audible files. That's available free too. So you can get the Spirits book in Audible or PDF. You can also get that too. And of course, in Spiritism 101. I also have Spiritism 101 in French, and the problem is a solution in French in PDF form for those in French. I also have How to Live, Inner Peace Through Spiritism in French, but of course that is available in Kindle and paperback, again with my other books. So I would suggest, if you like to start, that would be good. If you really want to start getting into understanding the spirit realm, the spirit universes, the multi-universes with the physical universes, because we are in this simulation within the simulation, and how all this works. You know, who are we? How do we grow? How do we get these to be these intelligent spirits? And how do we ascend? How do we improve ourselves in our physical world? And will things get better? How are we guided? This answers this. This is what Spiritism has done. This is why Spiritism is, you know, there's nothing wrong. There's a lot of good things about other religions, but they're a little fuzzy. A lot of them are very good on telling you how you should behave, right? Follow the golden rule. Almost all of them have, saying, do unto others as you would want others do unto you in some sort of shape or form. But what Spiritism really, what it does is it fills in details of who you are, what type of life you are, why do you have to go through these, you know, what you think are horrible experiences. Oh my God, my car got crashed. I couldn't buy these new tennis shoes. I don't have enough money. All those things, but to us is really real and horrible. But they all are learning experiences. Why? Because we've probably done something wrong to somebody else in the past. I talk about that in my book, The Problem is a Solution. And it's for us to learn to become a better person. Why do we want to become a better person? You want to get rid of these primitive thoughts, because thought is action in the spirit world, meaning you and maybe a group of friends can sit around and you can create your own mansion. You can create lakes. You can create your own boat. You can create a yacht to go on the oceans. You can, as you rise in the spirit world, and you go through universities and colleges, and I explain this in my book, The Spirit Realm, eventually you'll rise above the level of heaven around the earth, and then you'll be sent maybe to other planets to help other cultures. You'll it just becomes more and more perfect, and you have so much power as you rise and rise. So the pain and the inconvenience that you're going through in this physical world, and I know people write me all the time like, oh, I never want to be reincarnated. Why would I want to come back here? Well, because you're working towards something. You're not going to come back here just to be tortured again. If you live a good life, your next life will be much better. So you're working towards a wonderful goal. It's not fast, right? Now, of course, as humans, to us, a week and a day, oh, that's a long time. Like for a kid, an hour is a long time. But it is there. God is love. Jesus is love. Heaven is wonderful. Heaven, you're not sick. You do the type of job you want to do. You have free will. You don't have to rise up. You don't have to go to school if you don't want to. You can park yourself. But because your free will is always respected in heaven. Now on earth, your free will is still respected. But you will go through pre-planned trials and episodes of life. Let me give you an instance. Let's say, probably the job you have right now and the boss you have, that's probably pre-planned. But the little dramas within your job, a lot of that could be pre-planned, but then how you respond to those dramas and how you respond to that either good or bad boss who either hates you and tortures you kind of mentally versus who nurtures you and helps you rise, how you respond to those situations, that's your free will. So it's not perfect predestination, but there is some predetermination of the trials and tribulations you go through. And you only go through those which are edifying.